Okay, now for section 5.1.36, the question states that in a national survey, college students were asked, how often do you wear a seatbelt when riding in a car driven by someone else? The response frequencies appear in a table to the right. We want to be able to first construct a probability model for seatbelt use by a passenger, and then part B, would you consider it unusual to find a college student who never wears a seatbelt when riding in a car driven by someone else? So here we have our response, which is never, rarely, sometimes, most of the time, and always. And then we have the responses from that survey of the frequency. So therefore 127 stated never, 337 said rarely, and so on. Now the first question says that we want to be able to construct a probability model for seatbelt use by a passenger. Now when a probability experiment is run, probabilities are approximated using the empirical approach. That is, the probability of an event E is approximately the number of times event E is observed divided by the number of repetitions of the experiment. So we need to find the total of that column for the frequency. So if we add up the total here, 127, 330, 37, all the way through 2,541, we would get a total of 4,067. So what we're going to do is now, in order to create another column, which is called a probability column, we're going to take each individual frequency and divide it by the total number of trials. So you can see here we take that number 127 divided by 4,677, and then we do the same for each other element to get that probability. So the probability of never is 0.027, rarely is 0.072, sometimes is 0.123, most of the time is 0.235, and always is 0.543. And you can see here that this has now created our new column, which is the probability. Now the second part to this question says, would you consider it unusual to find a college student who never wears a seatbelt when riding in a car driven by someone else? Well, what's important here is to look at that word unusual, because it is defined as something with a definition that is stated. So we need to know what that unusual means. So to determine if a response of never is unusual, recall that an unusual event is an event that has a low probability of occurring. Typically, an event with a probability less than 5% is considered unusual. And then recall from part A that the probability of finding a college student who never wears a seatbelt when riding in a car driven by someone else is 0.027. You're going to use this value to determine if this event is unusual. And so, since the value of 0.027 is less than 5%, which is 0.05, then we would say it's unusual, because according to the definition, an event with a probability less than 5% is considered unusual.